You're listening to Goldbug Career, your podcast for helping you sort things out. So, how do you trick your brain to start doing hard things? There's a big challenge in the modern era, where we are constantly stimulated from watching videos, social media or playing games. With such things as virtual reality just around the corner, it might exacerbate this problem that many of us face. What happens when you eventually have to do things that are less stimulating? Can you open a book and read it for half an hour without doing anything else? Can you study or work on a project for an hour without checking your phone? Well, if you have a job, you might be forced to do this, but what about when you're home? Many times this sounds unappealing, difficult, or even boring. So you start indulging in playing video games or watching your favorite series on Netflix. And before you know it, a couple of hours have already passed. So you quickly start to finish up your task for tomorrow and stay up late, only to find yourself very tired the next morning and repeating the same cycle. One activity is entertaining without any effort, and the other one is hard and requires discipline. So it is logical that you are attracted to the easier and more satisfying one. You're probably very aware that these activities bring value to your life, and the others just momentary pleasure. So why do you still gravitate towards them? To understand this, we need to look at a neurotransmitter known as dopamine. The brain is divided into processing two very different kinds of information. One is stuff that's happening in the present, and that's primarily things like sensory experiences, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and emotional experiences. The other one is what's going to happen in the future. That's potentiality, things that don't exist yet, leading us to dopaminergic pleasure and making us feel excited, enthusiastic, and energized. The first kind of pleasure is known as the here and now neurotransmitters, such as serotonin and oxytocin. They are essentially the pleasure of enjoying something real. Rather than anticipation and excitement, it is often described as happiness, joy, satisfaction, or even something like bliss. It is a very different kind of experience and it is more rare. It's a lot easier to get excited about desiring something than it is to get satisfied and blissful with having it. Dopamine, which is the second kind of pleasure, is about what might be. There are lots of high dopamine release activities. Checking your messages, browsing social media, playing a game, all these are perfectly engineered to cause high dopamine releases, and businesses are very well aware of this. Getting people addicted is like a money machine to companies. Other examples are buying stuff that you don't need just because of the thrill of it. Playing on a slot machine in a casino while you lose money, just waiting for that sweet combination to get that bonus money and high dopamine release. Sugary foods and junk food also create dopamine, since you're thinking about how it's going to taste, fantasizing about how good the first bite is going to be. But as you keep eating, the dopamine becomes less and less, eventually wearing off. However, this can lead to binge eating and addiction to sweets. The other stereotypical example is of course drugs. All these activities cause an overstimulation of your brain. Anything that gets you into an imaginary world and away from the real world is going to be fueled by dopamine. So, the problem is not ceasing to do these high dopamine activities. The problem arises when you overstimulate yourself with them. We use dopamine hits to cover up our worries of everyday life, pain, emotions, and boredom that we haven't tackled by the roots but have ignored them. You're trying to cover up boredom, anxiety, stress, whatever bad feeling you have, masking it rather than solving it. This is quite problematic since they don't magically go away. Rather, they stay in your subconscious and keep bothering you. Don't you sometimes get that feeling that something is wrong, but you don't know what it is? This might be because of postponing too many tasks and forgetting about them. So they stay in a kind of limbo while you're doing high dopamine release activities, only to find out that a bunch of low dopamine tasks have emerged, causing even more distress. In a study published in 2009 by the Journal of Behavioral Neuroscience, rats were implanted with electrodes and put in a compartment with a single lever. When the rat eventually pulled the lever, they immediately gave a stimulus as a reward to the rat's brain. The rat would pull the lever for hours just to get this reward system, completely addicted and refusing to drink, eat, or even sleep. This demonstrates the danger of too much high dopamine. In a corollary experiment, researchers blocked the reward system of rats. This made them completely lethargic, unable to get up to drink water, only if placed directly next to their mouth. This is why people addicted to something find it so hard to quit and adapt to a normal life. They're used to dopamine levels that are so high that they become like the rats who are not motivated to do anything. This isn't just people addicted to drugs, it could be an addiction to social media, video games, alcohol, and much more. That is why there must be a balance of dopamine. Overstimulation of the brain also interferes with the maintenance of our biological balance. Addiction interferes with a biological process called homeostasis. The purpose of it is to maintain a normal balance, making adjustments in our body to maintain this balance. Addiction leads to changes in this normal balance. Humans' internal body temperature are a great example of homeostasis. Normally, our body keeps a temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius, 98 degrees Fahrenheit. If we are in the summer sun or in the winter snow, our body only changes by a degree or two. That's an example of homeostasis being maintained. While we shiver in the cold or sweat in the summer, that's our body maintaining homeostasis. So, is there anything you can do to overcome high dopamine rushes? Absolutely. You need to perform a dopamine detox. The key is to slowly remove these highly addictive behaviors and do other things. It might be picking up a day of the week, a full week, or even months. This entirely depends on the severity of the addiction. However, if you have a drug or alcohol addiction, please seek professional help to minimize the withdrawal symptoms. To start off a dopamine detox, pick a day in the week to avoid all the highly stimulating activities. Let your mind be at peace and let it recover from the constant high levels of dopamine. People will go to amazing lengths just to fill up the silence. When's the last time you sat in silence to experience your own thoughts? Mindfulness meditation is valuable for this. It allows you to stay present and focus on your breathing, helping you to reduce overstimulation. If you struggle meditating for 10 minutes, this shows how much overthinking and overanalyzing you engage in, living too much in your head. For example, some people watch TV while eating. You don't need to have any distractions, just allow yourself to be present and enjoy the experience of eating the food. When you're walking around, in public transport or in the elevator, your first intention might be to grab your phone and browse your email, messages, social media, searching for dopamine. So you need to set a day aside without your internet, phone, computer, music, and junk food. You can exercise, walk, meditate, write, study, read a book, clean your room, have a conversation. I know that this is not easy. You'll soon begin to crave the addictive behaviors you've been doing for years. But radical actions lead to radical results. This, of course, doesn't mean taking off every high dopamine activity out of your life, because realistically, this isn't going to happen. What you need to do is to connect more dopamine releases to activities that benefit you, serving as an incentive to give you long-term benefits. Using a high dopamine activity can be added as a reward for completing difficult work. So track all the low dopamine activities that you do. Cleaning your room, reading a book, working, exercising, and after completing them, reward yourself with some high dopamine activity. What we usually do is to combine low dopamine with high dopamine throughout the day, making us dread the hard work and just willing to spend 100% of our time in high dopamine activities, being unable to focus at all on the important tasks. Say you're at work and you start browsing social media, or playing a game in the break, or constantly checking your text messages. All this stimulates your brain and makes it more difficult to concentrate on your work. You aren't going to feel like doing low dopamine work since you are not motivated. That is why you should first complete the low dopamine work and then afterwards indulge in high dopamine activities. You could do 8 hours of low dopamine and 2 hours of high dopamine. Adapt this to your needs. Always try to not find a behavior that is damaging, such as drinking alcohol, smoking, etc. Instead, listen to music, play a game, watch a series. This system allows you to control your addiction. Another tip for doing low dopamine activities is associating low dopamine with high dopamine activities. If you love coffee, listening to jazz, or enjoy going out to the park for a breath of fresh air, combine this with another habit that you're trying to work on. You'll start developing a positive association of these habits, making the experience more enjoyable. So every time you go to the park, listen to jazz, drink some coffee, have a good book and begin to read a few pages. Eventually, opening a book will become more natural and enjoyable. Another example that a lot of people do is listening to their favorite genre of music while exercising or going to the gym. Eventually, you'll enjoy going to the gym just because of the endorphin release of building your muscles and getting stronger. Okay, so a quick summary. Our brain is divided into processing two kinds of information. One is stuff happening in the present, the here and now neurotransmitters such as serotonin and oxytocin that bring genuine bliss. The other one is dopamine, which makes us desire things. Both are good for you. The problem arises when you overstimulate yourself with high dopamine activities, since you begin to dread the important low dopamine activities such as work, reading, and studying. People that are addicted to something find it hard to quit and adapt to a normal life, becoming like the rats who aren't motivated to do anything. That is why there must be a balance between dopamine, since addiction interferes with a biological process called homeostasis. The purpose of it is to maintain a normal balance, making adjustments in our body to maintain this balance. To help you overcome addictions, you need to perform a dopamine detox. The key is to slowly remove these highly addictive behaviors and do other things. Track all the low dopamine activities that you do, and at the end of the day, reward yourself with some high dopamine activity. Last of all, learn to associate low dopamine activities with high dopamine activities, such as reading a few pages of a book every time you have your morning cup of coffee. Share this with your friends and family if you found the information useful. This helps me tremendously to keep producing content to help you sort things out. Thanks for listening. Until next time.